I'm really excited to have this candidate workshop. I think it's something that's very important and something that we need as a district to keep our eye on is our strategy for recruiting board members and keeping people engaged in our district. And we really need that succession planning. And I just can't thank everybody enough for coming here tonight and taking your time. And even should you not decide to run this November, this is information you can share with others or maybe consider in 2 years in the next election, because this every 2 years is the positions for the board members come up, and it rotates between 2 board members and 1 year, and then 3 and 2 and 3, and it alternates back and forth like that. So this information I hope you find very useful, and we'd also like to hear some of your feedback at the end. If you'd like to shoot a brief email of whether this was on point, if it was of use to you, what are the things you'd like to see. And we're also going to be recording this and having this available on our website so that you can direct others. If somebody missed it and who'd be interested, please let them know that it's here and available for them. Next slide there, Nikki, please. So this is our agenda we're going to follow tonight to try to get, we want to talk on each one of these things briefly. Our meeting tonight is, an hour and a half. Should we need all that time, we may or may not. So our first, oh man, I have to make this bigger. Let me go shrink you guys so I can read this. So we're going to have various presenters tonight to make sure you stay engaged and interested in what we have to say, so you don't have to listen to me the whole time. We're going to talk about what Cameron Park Community District is, and that's going to be presented by our General Manager, Jill Ritzman. And then I'm going to talk about what the 5-member Board of Directors is, how we work together, the various standing committees that we have. And then we're going to go on to the job of what do you actually do as a board member. And we have our former board members, Greg Stanton and Margaret Moore, are going to speak to that. And following on, after that, we're going to provide, they're also going to provide you some steps on how now you can get started to better understand the CSD so that you're prepared when you come join us, because we currently have 2 seats available in November, and we look forward to meeting our new board members. And then lastly, getting down to the nitty-gritty will be Felicity talking about how to campaign and how to do the outreach so that you're successful in your endeavor to join us here. And then we're going to have a question and answer session at the end. So if you have questions that you'd like to ask, we will make time for you to ask them. And, we'll just see how this goes, and it's our first time. So let's go ahead and turn this over to Jill, and she's going to give us some background about the Cameron Park CSD.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for being here tonight. I think as I talk to different community members, I think everybody always says to me, oh, I didn't know you did that, or oh, but I thought the county did that. So really this is to give you a little bit of framework about what the Community Services District does. So Cameron Park Community Services District is a special district. It's a local form of government, and it's separate and distinct from the El Dorado County. Special districts either provide one or a few sets of specialized services. You have water districts like the El Dorado Irrigation District. You have sewer districts, cemetery districts. In Cameron Park, we have an airport district, and Cameron Park Community Services District, which is a community services district or a CSD. Not all CSDs do the same thing. If you look just down the hill to El Dorado Hills, they provide different services from Cameron Park. So not all CSDs fit into the same box. Cameron Park provides fire and emergency services. We have 2 fire stations, and we contract with CAL FIRE for personnel, fire personnel. The fire stations, the engines, and all of the equipment are owned by the district. We have 143 acres of parks and facilities, including 4 community parks, 5 neighborhood parks, 5 open space areas, a community center, and a pool. The district maintains 20 distinct lighting and landscape districts that have landscape medians, streetlights, and in some cases they have park amenities. We provide CC&R compliance and architecture review for residential properties within the district boundaries. We have a recreation department that has special events, sports, enrichment classes, senior services, and an aquatics program. And we also do waste collection and recycling under a long-term contract with El Dorado Disposal. Some of the things that people think that the district does that actually El Dorado County does is roads, street signs, drainage, social services. Other than those distinct services, the county provides all of those other services. In addition to CAL FIRE, the district has 14 full-time employees, and they're arranged in 5 distinct departments. Do we have that org chart? Slide, there we go. So we have 5 departments within the district that provides all of those services. Our district has a $6.7 million budget that is mostly funded by property taxes, which is a good thing. Sales tax we're not dependent on, which is good right now. The budget is balanced, and we are setting aside a small portion of our budget to capital asset reserves. And we are governed by a 5-member elected board of directors. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Jill. I believe I am up next. And before we leave this chart, I'm going to talk about the board of directors and the role that we serve as a member of 5 community members. You do need to live within the district, the CSD district, to serve in this position. And if you look at this chart, the top box says public, and directly under that is board of directors. And that's where we serve. We are kind of an upper level policy guidance. We don't actually do the work. We don't go out there and mow the lawns and fix the lights and schedule any programs. What we do is provide guidance to the general manager specifically, and the general manager institutes what type of policies that we as a district, the board of directors deem appropriate for our community. So that's where you as a member of the board of directors fits into the entire community. We could move on to the next slide there, Nikki. So as a board, as I mentioned before, as a director, you are one of 5 people, and it is our job to understand the various needs of our district. And we kind of want a broad spectrum. We want to be able to cover everybody who lives in our community. And so as a result of that, you need to understand who lives here, what type of services they need, and you are, as the second bullet comments on, you are a trustee. You are an elected official to make sure that the district implements the services that are needed for our community. And as one of 5, it's important that you communicate with your director, your fellow directors, that you are respectful, and you have dialogue with each of them. Of course, you'll get to learn about the Brown Act, and there's some certain laws you must follow when you are communicating with them. And you also need to get to know your community And you kind of want on the board of different perspectives and different styles, because we need to represent our community, and we're all different people. We all come from different walks of life. We all have different viewpoints, and that's what we want on a healthy board, to fully represent our community. And as a board, you need to make sure to get to know and trust your fellow board members so that you can create policy that does help the district and move our community forward. So next slide there, Nikki. So this is important because as a board, you work as a team. You are one of five. And in order to come together, at least three have to agree on a certain decision or a certain policy or a certain way you want to move forward in the district. And so as a team, you do certain things. When you're successful and you pass something that's important and helps move the district forward and helps the community, you can celebrate those results. And it's important. Like, for example, what's going on right now is we're looking into our parks development, and we're doing a survey and reaching out to the community saying, how can we help you? What services do we need? And we're moving that forward, and that's really exciting to bring that to the community. And we also need to be accountable to each other and to our constituents, the people who live here. We need to listen to them and make sure we're doing what's appropriate. And commitment to the board is making the time that's needed, listening to others. When you get into the jobs, you'll see what the commitment is actually about. And the value conflict is a really interesting one, because that is actually how we understand the various standings of others in our community. Not everybody is going to have the same point of view. So it's very, very important that we listen to others who may not have our same viewpoints, but we bring them in and we work as a board together to find out what policy is going to serve our community the best. So as a board member, what our job is to serve our community and do what's best for everyone in that community. Create trust within the board and within our community, and that we're following through with what we need. So moving on to the next slide, I believe is a little more information regarding our organization as a board. As I said, we're as a board member, you're one of five. And as a board member, you actually serve on various committees. So the president every year will assign a board member to a committee. And we have what's called a standing committee, and these are memorialized in our bylaws. And they are the CC&R committee, the Parks and Recreation Committee, Fire and Emergency and Services Committee, and the Budget and Administration Committee. And those meet once a month, and 2 board members serve on each committee. And there's also at times, if there's a certain task to be done, for example, our solar project that we're moving forward to try to secure our funding into the future, save residents money, be more climate friendly, where we can actually, we have found that there are savings to be done by doing a solar project. And so in order to find that out, we assign 2 board members to this ad hoc committee, and they will help explore that. And one of our committee members is actually, I believe, is on here. I think I saw Steve show up. Yeah. So Steve's one of our committee members on that ad hoc committee to help us make those decisions and do what's right for the district. We also have a lighting and landscape districts committee, and they're working hard to evaluate each of the various, oh my gosh, what we have 20 or so LLADs approximately in our community, and those all have their own independent budgets. They provide specific services for those, and then LLAD is a lighting and landscape district. and those are being reviewed, and there's a committee assigned to uh, to um, to bring those, to do some evaluation and bring this forward to the board. So as a board member, you're one of 5 at the board meeting, and then you also would be assigned one or more of the standing committees and perhaps an ad hoc committee. And the ad hoc committees have a specific time frame and a specific mission to be accomplished, and they are not what's called a standing committee that is functioning as part of the standard district practice. So I believe I touched on everything that was under my general term of serving on the board. And I believe our next person up is, I guess, Greg and Margaret as a job of a board member. So I'll turn it over to them.
Thank you. So I'm going to kick this off, and then Margaret's going to jump in as well. But under the job of a board member and the relationship with the general manager, board members and the GM work together in a collaborative manner to achieve the board's and the district's goals and objectives. So in short, and with input from the constituents, you set the policy and direction of the district, and the GM and her staff take the actions necessary to achieve the goals. So in order for this relationship to work, it's imperative that you as a board member have a respectful and productive working relationship with the GM that is based upon trust and open communication. And I should also mention that the general manager is the board's only employee that you're responsible for. The general manager has the responsibility for all the staff beyond her role. You got anything else, Margaret?
No, you're doing great. Thank you. Keep going.
Thanks. And then the role in the community, I think that, first and foremost, you should be a good role model of the board and a good role model of the district. You'll be elected to represent the interests of all CSD residents. So you'll want to attend CSD sponsored events and other community events as much as you possibly can. And whether you're at events or not, engage people. I think Monique touched on this previously, but engage people, listen to their interests and concerns. The more you talk to the residents, the more you meet new people, the greater insight you'll have. Sorry, my dogs, which will translate into representing your constituents better and making a more informed decision when it comes to casting a vote. It's also an opportunity to talk about and promote what's happening in the CSD, whether it's programs or events or the various meetings, including board meetings and committee meetings. So I think part of the role is in the community is just getting out in the community and hearing the community. Margaret?
Yeah, that's you're jumping into steps to take now too, also to get to know the CSD. And I think what's important is a couple things. Is not anybody who runs and becomes a candidate knows everything about the CSD when they get in. I mean, it's really very intricate, and you will learn as you go. And what's really, really important about being a candidate is that you have passion for the community. You have passion for the parks and what we do, the community center, our fire services, the things that you see that are going around in your community. You have passion for that. You're a great candidate for the community service district. That's a really important part. The one thing that Greg mentioned this, and I'll expand on, is go and walk the parks and see how people are enjoying it. That's how you get to know what services we're providing that people really, really use. Get to know the website. The website has so much information on it that you can find out more stuff that intricately that you might not know. It has all the events that you might not even be interested in going to. Get on the newsletter so you get all the information. The newsletter will tell you what events that are going on. Go to events when it's allowed. That's where you'll see also where people get active and what they like. See, listening to your neighbors. Greg talked a lot about that. One of the things you can do to prepare is Google Robert's Rule of Order. That's pretty much how the governing process works at the board meetings. Google that, learn a little bit about it, find out what a consent calendar means. Those are little things that might help you when you walk into the job. Also Google the Brown Act. The Brown Act is another very important aspect of community meetings and how you run meetings and who you can talk to and who you can't, so that there's open transparency in all districts. Be ready to learn and ask questions, because once again, you ask questions, you're going to learn what other people think, but also ask questions of the general manager. And that's an important part of the relationship with the general manager, is ask questions. Find out what it is that you don't know, because not everybody's going to know everything. And the other thing is that's on here is training. That's the one thing that's really great also about the district. If you choose to be a candidate and you do get on the board, there are training opportunities that will teach you many different ways on how to be the best board member, how the Brown Act works, what is your ethical training, a lot of different ways to learn as you go and get trained, so you're not left alone. You're not thrown into the board meetings and without any kind of guidance. So there is a lot of training that you can get when you become a board member. And basically, if you are interested in this community, please run for the board, because we need good candidates that really step up and can continue to make this great.
Thank you. So I also want to talk a little bit about time commitment and responsibilities, because you're going to need a lot of passion because you're going to spend a lot of time. And I think it's important to understand the commitment that you're making to the residents of Cameron Park and to the board. So you will be attending monthly board meetings. You'll be attending likely 2 committee meetings a month. There might also be workshops and trainings. You might spend, a couple of hours or more preparing for each board meeting, and as time as well preparing for each committee meeting. The first year, and I think this has been touched on through a few different speakers so far, but the first year, and even before you are elected, but definitely during the first year, there's a learning curve, and there is a lot to learn, and there's a lot to read. I noticed Eric is on this call, Eric Easton, and I think when he had asked me about this, I mentioned there's just a lot of reading. The Parks Master Plan, the Capital Improvement Plan, the Fire Master Plan, marketing, financial. I mean, there's just a lot of information that you need to come up to speed on, so that when an item comes before your board, that you have a good background and information, in addition to obviously the work that's going to be done by Jill and staff to present that item. But you need a lot of background information just to understand the nuances of what you're considering. And in regard to responsibilities, I think first and foremost, be prepared for the board meeting. Do not cut corners. Do not, blow off reading the agenda packets. I know the agendas, depending upon the meeting, and the backup material can be lengthy and thick, and like I said, can take a couple hours to go through sometimes. But you've got to read it in advance. You've got to make notes. If you have questions, then you reach out to the general manager well in advance of the board meeting so you can get those questions answered. Doesn't mean you won't ask the same question during the board meeting, but you want the GM to be prepared for whatever background information is needed, so that question can be answered to the full board. You want to keep an open mind also as a board member when you're going into board meetings. You're going to read the information, but don't just make a snap decision. You want the input of the public. You want the input of your fellow board members. You want the information presented by staff. Consider all of that and then make or cast a vote.
One thing we should bring up real quick, Greg, is we didn't mention the fact, attend the committee meetings and board meetings before you decide if you want to be a candidate, because at that point you can see and how it all works, and you can also read the agenda packet when you walk in. The committee meetings are a little more free-flowing, so you can ask some more questions. So if you can attend some of the meetings, that would be really helpful as well.
I absolutely agree. If you don't attend meetings beforehand, you're walking in blind. And you should be attending the meetings, understand how they're run, what information is presented, what the hot topics are and interests are, the direction of the board. So yes, and that ties into the time commitment. The time commitment in terms of running, and the time commitment understanding if you do run and you're elected, what you're in for. So sitting through full board meetings is, I think, a good primer for understanding what you're in for. But as I was about to say too, you know, I should have added one more item, and that is that, you know, before you make that decision and cast that vote, you still always keep in the back of your mind a fiduciary responsibility that you have to the community and to the district. So talking about engaging with people in the community and listening to their needs, their wants, there may be things that aren't financially possible that you're going to be requested to support because the district basically can't afford it.
And you know, with that in mind, when you serve as a director, you serve the whole community. Not one single issue should be your focus. That should be all issues, because what the services we provide is for everybody. So it's certainly important. Then there may be something that you're passionate about that may be one thing, that's fine, but you do have to look at the whole picture and what else you need to do to serve those other areas in your community that you might not be as familiar with.
And unlike the Board of Supervisors, you're not elected to represent a specific area in the district. Whether someone voted for you or not, or didn't vote at all, you are representing the best interests of everyone in the district.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that goes on to you, Margaret, but I think you already covered some of the next steps to take now to get to know the CSD.
Yes, we rolled it all into one, Greg, so.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you both. That was very informative. I think you did a good job representing what you need to do, what the job is, and the opportunities you have to get to know the CSD better now, so that you are prepared to be a candidate and be elected. So our next slide, I believe we're moving on to Felicity, and she has a bunch of information on how to help you be successful and what to expect in campaigning. So we're going to turn that over to Felicity now.
Yes, thank you. So I appreciate being asked, having just lost an election, being asked how to campaign. But I think that's part of that's part of how our democracy works, and how participating in this works. You know, you're going to win some and you're going to lose some. And, you know, we're not in it to win or lose. We're in it because this is the meat. This is the heart of democracy. I mean, I really, really wish that, I wish it was like a normal thing for people to run, and most people ran. I've made jokes that I wish it was like jury duty, that you every once in a while you had to run, like, oh gosh, it's my year to run, and you have to pick an office, and bummer. But you know, because I think more people, it is hard to run, it's hard to be in office, but it's so amazing to be on, you know, to be part of the policy making, and to be more deeply involved in the community. I mean, I just couldn't be happier with the community that I've met over just the past year. It's been amazing. So, so I myself and some of the others added a list here. I knocked out a bunch of bullet points because there's just not enough time to talk about it all, but there are some really good resources. And on the next slide, you'll see there's some books. But first of all, identify why you're running and be able to articulate that. So again, for me, my sort of deep reasons have been that democracy starves without participation. I mean, this is why we've allegedly fought some of the wars we've fought, and you know, why we're such a great country, is that we can vote for who is making these policy decisions. So, nothing made me prouder than taking the oath to defend the Constitution. So, but you know, but a more immediate reason might be something like concern about our fire safety, concern that things could be done in a different way. So identify why you're running and be able to articulate that very clearly. And then identify what value you can add. You know, for me, I felt I could add being an auditor as a way to be able to read and read and read lots of documents and pull out kind of what are some of the key things that a district might need to, some of the standards a district might need to adhere to, but also looking at numbers, but what do the numbers really mean in terms of performance of services and things like that. But somebody else might have really great project management experience. That's huge. Project management experience. Maybe somebody's really good at listening and kind of articulating and saying back to people what they had said, so that a meeting can go well, and so they can listen to the public and really hear what it is that they have to say. There's a lot of backgrounds, being a treasurer for a school PTA could be very helpful background. There's all kinds of things that can be helpful. Okay, so enough about the candidate. The candidate needs to listen to the community about what issues are important. So there's many ways to do this. Margaret and Greg have talked about getting out there as possible these days, but we can subscribe to the Mountain Democrat, read the letters. We can look at Nextdoor, see what people are posting, really connect with the communities the sub-communities you're already part of. But then don't just stick to them, and reach out and try to find more, and listen to what is really important to the community. And then kind of getting down into the rules of the game, if you will, it's important to know where to find your election laws and forms. I'm not going to necessarily go through all that in the few minutes that we have. I can highlight a couple of things, but these are the kind of things you need to really put on your calendar and pay attention to. I mean, for example, there are periodic forms that you need to file with the county on maybe how much money you've raised and what you've spent the money on and who the money came from. And if it was above $100, if it was $100 or higher, specifies who gave you the money. But the periodic dates that those are due are not regular. So it's not like once a quarter, it's not once a month. It might be this date, and then really like months until the next date, and then all of a sudden another one's due in like 2 weeks. So it's if it was a bigger campaign, you'd have somebody to help you take care of all that, and maybe you do have somebody to help you take care of all that, but you just have to have a sense of when forms are due, and make sure they're in your calendar and you've got them in your radar. So some of the resources to find those are the Secretary of State has a section called Elections and Voter Information / running for office. So the Secretary of State, California Secretary of State, has a section on their website called Running for Office. And it's got really some great resources. And again, there's some different rules if you're running for local office versus if you're running for state office. They have there's one very thick kind of guidance manual that they will even provide you a printed out copy, but you have to remind them that they promised that they would. They might not remember that. It's printed, it's written on the copy. There's the County Office of Elections has always to me been very professional and very helpful, and it's got quite a few people in there. So the County Office of Elections, I know that they are also offering various trainings and PowerPoints and whatnot to bring people up to speed. So they've been really helpful. So again, the Secretary of State, Running for Office, and the County Office of Elections are good places to learn about the rules of the game. And kind of like Margaret was saying about the Brown, is it the Brown Act, I think. The rules of the game, they're kind of tedious, like filling out these forms and tracking. They don't follow even normal accounting rules, and they're not intuitive. But the purpose of them is sunlight. The purpose of them is so that some interest that is not necessarily in the best interest of our community isn't fully funding a candidate and nobody knows about it. It should be in these forms, which are public information. So they're a lot of work, they're tedious and all that, but they're for a really good purpose. Before I go on, does anybody else have anything they'd like to add so far?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I want to make a couple of comments. First and foremost, I just want to emphasize that if you are serious about running, then you should understand, and if you really want to be elected, then you should understand the commitment that you need to make if you're really in it to win it. So, it includes a number of different things, and you can be creative with what you do. But we talked about previously attending events. Well, if you're going to attend an event during the campaign season, do it and do it loud and proud. Put signs on your vehicle, wear a t-shirt, wear a hat, carry balloons, do something to attract some attention to yourself so you can engage people like we talked about before, and just start to get people to know you, and that you're actually you're going to be running for the office and you're on the ballot, and that you want the job, and you have to really want it, and you have to demonstrate it to the voters. I think that building a simple website, especially in this day and age, building a website will help that you can direct people to. Your last bullet point talks about, or mentions, walk and knock and call and talk. If you're going to walk, which I highly recommend, you walk the district and visit homes, that you have a door hanger rather than a postcard or some other piece of literature, so that you're not putting something that some might feel is trash on their doorstep, that you're hanging it on the door hanger. They don't have to bend down and pick it up. And that's campaign literature. And it does a lot of what you just talked about, which is identifying why you're running and what value you add and so forth. Campaign signs still work, but there's an investment there, just as there is an investment in door hangers and potentially if you don't have someone that can build a website for you, so it's going to cost some money. But if you're going to use campaign signs, I just want to remind everybody that El Dorado County, you can't put them in the right-of-way. If it's near the road, it's likely in the right-of-way. If it's on a corner of a road, and I know we see them there all the time, but they're not legal to place there. You have to have them back far enough off the road that they're on private property, and you need the property owner's permission to place them there. I think that was it.
I have 2 points with Greg on that, and everybody else is fundraising for the CSD. You do not, there's a certain threshold that if you don't raise that much money, you do not have to have a campaign treasurer and have to do all the rules that to abide by if you are not raising money. So you might want to definitely look into that. I don't know if the rules have changed since the last time I ran, but you might want to look into that and to know what the threshold is. So if you raise money, if it goes above, and you really have to have an election account, and you have to have a treasurer, and you have to be able to show what you raised and where the money went. The other thing is that it's really, really, really the most important thing if you are going to run is to really work on your candidate statement that you give to the elections office, because that's what gets published in the book. And that is sometimes the only thing that people have to go by on what you stand for and who you are. So that is, some candidates don't put that much emphasis on it, or don't put something on it in it at all, and that's a mistake. You really need to focus on that, and that would be what you can use to go from there on your campaign and what you want to say in your postcards and everything from there. But put that effort into that one statement that goes into all the election books.
And just to add to Margaret's comment, the challenge is that you're limited on the number of characters that you can put in the campaign statement. So it's got to be well crafted and succinct. And going back to my comment before about the website, like Margaret said, this might be the only thing someone looks at, the only information they gather to make a decision to cast a vote. But if you have your website in that candidate statement, it gives them another place to go where they can read more about you, and you can convince them or persuade them that you're the right person for the job.
There's a lot of things you can do without spending money too, and that's social media, and you know that, and everybody knows that. You just utilize your social media network, your Facebook, the Instagrams, the YouTube. You know, people go and use YouTube as a source all the time now, and it's probably not, you know, everybody doesn't want to do videos, but you can do them easily now with your phone, and talk about what you do. You know, FaceTime lives and any kind of videos on Facebook. I know that social media can have its negative, but it also can have its positive by getting your message out. So that's something that you may want to consider in how you would run that with your
And the last thing I'd say is have fun with it. Have fun with running. It is fun. It really is. It's an enjoyable time. You know, you get friends to engage with you, to help with the campaign, and others that sign on because you've convinced them that, you know, you're the right person for the job. Get out and meet people, go to events, have fun with it. It is honestly fun.
So I
In my
hope that
opinion.
message must be really clear to everybody. Please run. It's super hard. Have fun. Be totally prepared, and then it's a lot of work. So it's kind of like the messages we're all getting about COVID right now. There's a lot of different messages, and it's all true. Okay, I'm gonna carry on, but I welcome any other additional comments. So I'm gonna say, for those of you that are into numbers and Excel and filtering and all that, the next part is super fun. Again, if you had a bigger team, you might delegate it to somebody else. But and this is that as a candidate, you can obtain a list. And I'm probably other people who are not candidates, I'm not sure of the rules, but you can obtain a list of registered voters from the county, and then you can analyze it. And the county, just as background, gets that data from the state. And I am a data wonk, and the data is not, I'll say it's not very good. There's a lot of missing information. The numbers are not uniformly entered. So that you go through it and it doesn't filter. It's not perfect, but it is there. And this is where you kind of do your analysis, like how many, you know, we have, I don't know the exact numbers, but we have, let's say, roughly 20,000 people in Cameron Park. That list of registered voters, how many are registered voters? How many actually vote? How many voted in the last election? How many voted in the election before that? How many votes do you need to win? And again, there's some interesting kind of calculations that go in, whether you're competing against however many candidates for 3 slots or however many candidates for 2 slots. But I think it's important, you know, sort of a baseline to figure out how many votes you're aiming for, because that helps you strategize, again, how you're going to be going about getting people to know you. And as Greg said, you know, or everybody's been saying, you could go to events and have balloons, but how many people are you attending events that are impactful? Or are you going to use postcards? Are you going to mail postcards to everybody in Cameron Park, or just to the voters, or just to the frequent voters? It helps you, because and as Margaret's saying too, you know, you can spend a lot of money or you can spend less money. So this kind of information helps you strategize how you're going to go about convincing voters to vote for you. So it's important, again, to have a good database to track volunteers and donations and people who signed up for emails, what you spent money on. If that threshold is about $2,000, if you believe you're going to raise, or you do end up raising $2,000 or more, you need to form a committee, and there's some additional paperwork affiliated with that committee. But you know, you need to track what you spend your money on, because you know, Duncan Hunter down in Southern California, he's sort of like, he was a elected official that, I think they went to Disneyland, they went to Italy on family trips, and you know, these are things that you're not allowed to spend the money on. Okay, just FYI, you can't spend it on your son's birthday party. You can spend the money on legitimate campaign expenses. So again, with some of this steps that you've taken on this checklist, and that others have stepped in, you're going to plan how you're going to run, walk and talk. Are you going to walk and knock, or are you going to call and talk, or postcards, or social media? It's not on this list, but you know, if you can, have yourself a mentor, have somebody that's been there, done that, and can help you figure this stuff out, because there is a lot to figure out. But having somebody who can help guide you through it is really, really helpful. just like anything else in life. So before we move to the next slide, does anybody have any specific comments or specific, I guess we'll open up questions at the end, but does anybody have any additional comments?
I just had one regarding the database, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if I recall correctly, you can get that on a disc from Elections. I think it's $15, something like that.
25, I think. Yeah, and it's a
25.
disc. Yeah.
And it's an Excel spreadsheet that you can filter and you can manipulate to really narrow down the set of data that you want to target.
Yeah. I'll just give you an example that probably was completely useless information, but I recently figured out the average age of the people who vote regularly in our district, and I don't remember the exact number, but it might have been 61 or something like that. And then I was curious because I was trying to plan a strategy. I was like, do I send postcards for people who are going to vote the minute they get that packet in the mail, like all the postcards, or do I want to delay some for people who are actually going to go to the polls or who tend to delay? So I did some analysis and I was like, well, who goes to the polls? And it's a lot less people, but they tend to be a bit younger. They're an average of 57 years old. So it's not that helpful, but what was helpful was seeing the percentage of how many voted later versus how many voted earlier, and that actually affected when I sent out postcards. So
that's a very good point you just mentioned about mail-in. 80%, I think, Greg, of the Cameron Park residents vote by mail now. So you might have your election day, but you got to be way out in front of that.
Absolutely.
Way out in front. Way out in front.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, number 10. And how to campaign tips and techniques that work. So go for it. So we've kind of given you a lot of, please run, and here's a bunch of stuff that you need to do. and then the go for it is because really it is really fun, but it is also like I don't know, a long distance race or something. I mean, you go and you go and go and go, and you kind of need your you need that enthusiasm. You probably need some cheerleaders at home and some ability to care for yourself, but you've got to go, and it really is a team effort. It's I don't know what else to say, but it just really is. It's there's the candidate, but it's kind of like a whole team of people that are excited about whatever the candidate has to offer, and it might not really be about them, but it's more about the issues that they feel are really important and how they feel they can handle them. So it's definitely a team effort. I want to talk a little bit about kind of money amounts. And I apologize, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I don't know if there's is there a filing fee? Does anybody remember? There is a filing fee. Is it like $150 or something like that?
$250, I think.
$250. And then the candidate statement, I want to say, is another $700 or something. I don't remember the figures. I apologize. It's a few $100s more for that really important candidate statement. And then if you want to have your statement in Spanish, that's several $100s in addition. And so that $2,000 that I was saying is the threshold for having to form a committee. It can be, you can end up spending $2,000 pretty quickly on some campaign expenses, but you don't have to. So we actually haven't really talked about this, and I don't think I'm going to, because there are resources. But if you're so inclined, and once you've kind of figured out a budget, fundraising may be part of what you need to do. And some people, that might actually be a skill set you're showing up with already. You're an experienced fundraiser. That can be very helpful, or somebody who is and can help you learn how to do that. And what's the expression? Oh, I can't remember the exact expression, but basically that you need to ask your friends first before you go asking everybody else for money. So it's, it's not like, oh, I'm not going to bother my friends, but I'm going to go ask other people for money. It's like, no, you actually have to ask your friends first, because that means you believe in yourself. And anyway, I'm not going to go into all that right now, but in your mission, but I hope people who are looking at the slides can see there are some resources. There's lots online. Google how to campaign or something like that. And there's actually some really, really good resources out there. And there's some books if you're a book reader, which I've listed here. And the last slide it's pretty small font, but if you are really serious about running, print this or screenshot it and blow it up and print it, or go to the candidate, the Office of Elections at the county, because there's really important dates here. And I think that August 7 is potentially the biggest and most important date that's upcoming. So well in advance of August 7, you'll want to have scheduled a meeting with Kim Smith, I forget her title, at the Office of Elections, so that you can bring your candidate intention statement, really the Form 501 that says, I'm running, I'm going to run, and some of the other forms that are required at that time, including, Greg, is this one the candidate statement? Yeah, that's when the candidate statement is due. So that, I believe that's the name of the succinct couple hundred words that you need to write about, that might be the only thing that people read about why you're running and why you're qualified. So, so anyway, that is all that I have for now. It's exciting, it's fun, there's a lot it's kind of a whole, as we know, profession and world all in its own, but it's a great thing to do for our community, and there's lots of people in our community with great background in a variety of ways. So I really do hope that we see lots of people running for the Board of Supervisors, and that's it from me for now. Board of Directors. Thank you. And Board of Supervisors. We already had a lot of people running for the Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Margaret, Greg, and Felicity. And now after seeing Felicity's approach to campaigning, I now know why she had more votes than I did in the last election. So that was very enlightening. Thank you. And I sure like to think that some of our attendees have some questions. And the way I think we should do this is that there's a little button on there to raise your hand, or you can send a chat message to Nikki, and you can say who you'd like to speak to, and you can be unmuted, and you can let us know what you'd like to know, and you may want to hear more than one person answer your question or just one question, but we'd really like to assist you in your endeavors, or at least understanding the commitment here. So Nikki, do we have anyone who has a question?
Don't see anybody. Hi, you guys. We have questions.
I have a question. This is Sid Bassett. When there are 2 openings, as there are this year, how does that generally work? Is it if there's multiple candidates, is it just that top number of votes received, or how does that generally work?
I'll go ahead and answer that. When you have 2 people, there's 2 seats available, and you have 2 people running, they will automatically get those seats. If you have more than 2 people running, then the most votes will get the 2 seats. And if you don't have enough people running, there is an appointment process that would be gone through to appoint a board member.
Okay, thank you.
And more questions?
We answered everybody's questions. Come on, you guys. I have a question. Who on the call is interested in running?
Good question.
That was my question too. We're gonna have to change our presentation, that it's just all ice cream and cupcakes. These meetings.
Well, if we were able to do this in person and pull out the ice cream and cupcakes, we'd have many more people here.
That's true.
But they still might not be asking questions because their mouth would be full.
We do Frank's Cupcakes. From Park.
So November 3rd is the election, right? And that means that the ballots will be out in our mailboxes probably October, I'm totally guessing, but October 10 or 12 or something. So people, you know, all you candidates will need to work backwards from those dates to get going. And I don't know if it's I don't think it's a conflict of interest to offer help, but anyway, just try to find some guidance and go for it.
Yeah, does Margaret, Greg, you know, we also have another, Margaret, Greg, do you want to add anything at this point?
No, I think I covered a lot of what I think is important. I just appreciate that the district is doing this workshop. I know that when I ran, it was not as much information for me like this forum has provided. So I think this is very helpful. And if there's anybody on the call who is interested in running and needs some, you know, wants to just ask me some questions, I'm open for that.
Hi, this is Paul. I've got a couple questions. So would it be possible and that those that are on the call could get a copy of the presentation, either pick up hard copy at the CSD or have it emailed to them? And then the second one, if I understand it correctly, I think Brown Act says the most number of meetings you can attend in a month is 6, or not attend, that you would be in receipt of a stipend. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I'll go ahead and answer that. Yes, this presentation and perhaps a video will be available and on the website for download. And if you go to our website, you will find admin@cameronpark.org, and you can email the district and they can make sure to get you a copy of this presentation. And then your second question regarding the stipend is that a director can file for reimbursement of $100 per meeting, but it is capped, I believe, at 3 meetings per month. Is that right, Jill? Is it 3?
I think it's 6.
Is it 6?
Yeah, I
Okay.
believe so.
It's 6.
I think our policy is 5. Is that right, Nikki?
I think it's 6. I could look it up really quick.
Used to be 6.
We
Okay.
don't usually have that many meetings,
Yeah.
so it's not common.
It's, for my experience, it's been sort of 1 to 3 meetings a month. It's
Mhm.
been the normal.
And those are only meetings that are, it's not like ad hoc committee meetings. Those are not included in the stipend, I believe.
Correct. That's correct. My question to everyone is, was this worthwhile? Was this workshop worthwhile? It's the first time we've done it, and so it would be good for us to get feedback whether the information is useful or not, and whether we should do this again. Liz said he's covering your ears.
Just so people can talk freely. No, I'm just kidding.
Personally, I thought it was very enlightening, and I think it provides a good overview of a path or several paths with different options you might be able to take if you choose to run. So personally, I thought it was well done. Thank you.
Thumbs up for Chris. Sid said yes on the chat. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Chris.
And if you have any further comments that you'd like to share, again, please email the district and let us know. We'd appreciate that with regards to this meeting. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to share any of my experience with you regarding my experience on the board, which I have found extremely rewarding. I encourage you all to run. We need engaged members of our community who are willing to take the time. And you guys here doing that right now I'm quite thrilled to see this many people attend. let's see, Eric, I believe, has something he wants to add. Eric?
Why, yes, I do. I want to echo something said earlier, is to encourage anybody who is interested to make it a priority to be attending meetings over the next few months. That is really the best way to get a taste of what it means to be involved here. Besides the fact that if you do run, it will definitely help your ability to step in and fill a role, because there is, as you've heard, there's a big learning curve. But what I found, not just in my appointment from last year, but in the 2 years leading up to that, where I attended meetings and was involved, is that the further you go, the less front loading you have to do, and the more confident you are in the kind of decisions you can make, and the easier it then is to think further, think broader. So it is a building process, and once you get past that initial download and really begin to get into the work of it, it is really satisfying. It's a really good place to serve the community. And once you come to the meetings, you'll understand not a lot of people know what goes on. And that's not the point. We don't serve so that everybody knows. We serve because it's a good thing to do, and we want to bring the gifts we have. So I encourage you, anybody who's interested, please be coming to our meetings over these next few months, both for just understanding and to really get up to speed on the issues that we're dealing with. We've got some things that we're working on right now that are very important, with budget, and then in this season of COVID, and new initiatives. We got some great new things happening. So this will be a really good time for you to come and get more exposed to what's happening, get the language, get the information. So I encourage that.
Great, thank you, Eric. And all right, folks, last chance for a question. We're here and available. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you.
FYI, I did confirm $600 is the cap.
Oh, okay.
6 meetings.
Thank goodness we don't have 6 meetings.
Jeremiah, I've been on listening while my kids have been making a ton of noise in the background. I just want to say thank you for doing this. I did try and recruit some people to listen and consider it, but they said no every time. So I'm not giving up. There are some good people who are, I think, definitely qualified and would make good directors that I'm going to keep chipping away on.
Thank you.
Do more of these. That's my feedback.
It's a good idea.
Thank you, Jeremiah. And anyone else want to ask a question? Well, then I want to thank all of our participants for joining us today. Margaret and Greg and Felicity and Jill and Nikki for helping out. And I want to thank all the attendees. This is really important for your community to become engaged, and can't encourage you enough. We all need you in our community. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Send any emails into the district if you want a copy of the presentation, or ask any questions. All the directors' emails are listed there. And so with that, unless there's something else that I missed.
Just a thank you for the invitation to be on the panel. I appreciate it. I enjoyed it. And thanks to all for listening in.
Thank you, Monique and Jill. Thank you for inviting me too as well. It was really nice to get together.
Okay, see you guys on the ballot.
All right.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Hey,
Good night.